The Life of Pi.summary 16. As he was lying on the tarpaulin, trying to have some rest and dry out in the sun, Pi got splashed with water, while Richard Parker began to growl. Perplexed, he turned his head and noticed a black object floating in the water. It took him some time to realize what he was looking at. It was a whale. Since that was not his first time encountering a whale, Pi believed that whales somehow communicated among themselves and came to see him out of pure curiosity. Besides, dolphins were regular visitors, while birds were rare. However, he did have some luck with a masked booby, whom he managed to catch and turn into a meal. Although it may seem that the presence of birds announced land, that was not the case. But something else inspired Pi with hope. He noticed a ship. He was overwhelmed with pure happiness, believing that the end had come to his sufferings. The ship was coming right towards them. There was no ways it could have passed them by without noticing them in the lifeboat. Pi did not find it necessary to shoot the flare, as it was obvious that the ship was coming for them. But alas, their small boat was not noticeable enough for the huge tanker. It passed by so closely that the waves from its walls pushed the boat up. They could only watch it pass until it disappeared from sight. Pi met Richard Parker's eyes. They did not display the understanding that their hope for salvation was gone. Overwhelmed with emotions, Pi shouted words of love to the tiger, promising to get him to land. One day, they ran into trash. The water was filthy, smelly with objects floating around. Pi sought the opportunity to find useful objects, but since there weren't any, he took one wine bottle and used it for a short message, where he introduced himself and described what had happened. He sealed the bottle and threw it back into the ocean, hoping that it would reach land. Further chapters describe Pi's sufferings. It seems that he had lost hope of survival and was giving up on life. Richard Parker was not looking so good either. They were both lying motionless, too exhausted for any activity, even for finding food. Pi felt that death was near. He even wrote it down in his diary. Richard Parker was also close to dying, had no strength to react when Pi approached him to check if he was breathing. But that was not all. The tiger became blind. Pi recalled Richard Parker rubbing his eyes and meowing intensely for several days. Unfortunately, the same thing happened to Pi shortly thereafter. He knew what was about to happen. Blindness did not come suddenly. He was losing his sight slowly. They became unable to fight for survival. It was over. Pi said farewell to the tiger, feeling sorry for letting him down. As he lay down waiting for death, he heard a voice asking if anyone was there. Not believing his ears, Pi did not answer, but the question was repeated. Pi believed that he had gone mad, so he decided to play a game with the voice. The conversation quickly turned into discussion about food, where each of them expressed preferences about a meal. When Pi's questions about eating a carrot remained unanswered, he was sure he was talking to Richard Parker. But then he realized that this voice had a strange accent, pronouncing the as ze, like he was French or something. However, Pi could not identify his speaker. They continued about supplies they had on the boats, and eventually Pi invited him onto his boat so they could share their sorrow. Just as the voice agreed to move onto Pi's boat, it revealed its real reasons for coming over by saying that he wanted Pi's liver and flesh. But before he managed to do anything, he was attacked and killed by Richard Parker. Pi felt sorry for the poor man, but surviving instinct outweighed him, and he used some of his skin as a bait and some as a substitute for food until he caught a fish. The tears he shed for the death of his fellow rinsed his eyes, and he regained his eyesight. A couple of days later he spotted trees. Believing that they were an illusion, he did not react. However, their boat was steadily moving towards the trees, and the trees grew bigger and bigger until Pi could not deny their existence. As he came closer, he was shocked to learn that the island had no soil, but was rather a dense mass of vegetation, making Pi believe that this was not an island, but a living organism. As he investigated the island, he realized the island was inhabited with hundreds of thousands of meerkats who showed no fear in Pi's presence. It seemed that they had never encountered any predator, which turned out to be fatal, as Richard Parker seized the opportunity not only to eat, but to satisfy his killer instinct. However, something about that island made the tiger come back to sleep on the boat every night, so Pi decided to make himself a bed on the island where he could be on his own. That is when he noticed the meerkats run wildly into the trees as soon as the night approached. Ponds of fresh water were actually killing machines as they boiled with dead fish during the night. All the tasty and healthy algae Pi ate during the day released deadly acid during the night, killing everything nearby. Over and above, when Pi tried to reach a fruit on the highest branches of trees, it turned out not to be fruit, but human teeth folded into layers and layers of tree leaves. The peaceful and refreshing island turned into a killer during the night. Pi had to leave the place as soon as possible. The following morning, Pi and Richard Parker left the island. In chapter 94, Pi finally reached proper land. He was in Mexico. Richard Parker jumped from the boat and disappeared into the woods without even turning to look at Pi for the last time. This hurt Pi and struck him hard, as he expected some theatrical goodbye, something memorable, to prove that Richard Parker actually did have some emotions. Pi was found by peasants. They informed the authorities about him, and he was rushed to hospital.